I'm Bill Playfair, publisher of the book series Julia, the programming language for people who just want solutions. This is a production of the Diary of a Mad Data Scientist. Editorial director Ann Turner introduces this episode.
Introduction to Julia Mapping, a practical guide, now available on Amazon. This explainer was produced and narrated by Google NotebookLM and reviews the book's highlights.
Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're digging into a guide called Julia Mapping, a practical guide. Why? Because we're going to see how modern tools can help us tell stories with data that are actually, true, and not just pretty pictures. So let's just jump right in with a really important question. Because when it comes to maps, what you see is definitely not always what you get. A map can look absolutely beautiful, but it can also be telling you a complete and total lie. Okay, check this out. It's a map of nightlights across the US. Looks cool, right? You think, oh, that's where things are the most lit up. And yeah, that's true, but what it's really showing you is just where people live. And this right here is the biggest rookie mistake in mapping, just plotting the raw numbers. It doesn't matter if it's sales data, disease cases, or tweets. If you just throw the raw counts on a map, you almost always end up with a population map in disguise, and that completely buries the real story. So, how do we fix this? How can you create maps that are not only nice to look at, but are also telling the truth, especially if you're not some professional cartographer or a coding wizard? Well, that's where this new guide, Julia Mapping, comes into play. It's really designed for people like researchers, analysts, and data journalists. Basically, anyone who needs to make some seriously high-quality maps without getting totally bogged down in complicated software. And this is the whole philosophy behind it, which is just fantastic. The goal isn't to make you a software expert. The whole point is to give you tools that just work. They get out of your way, so you can actually focus on the story your data is trying to tell. And the guide is built around a modern programming language called Julia, which is designed for exactly this kind of get-it-done efficiency. Now, the choice of Julia is really interesting here. Older languages can sometimes feel a bit cobbled together, kind of like a tangle of pipes. Julia, though, is a 21st century language that came out of MIT. It was built from the ground up to be incredibly fast. It combines the ease of use you'd get from an interactive language with the raw performance of a compiled one. Plus, its package system is just a lot smoother, which means you avoid a ton of those setup headaches. So, the book basically hands you a complete toolkit for mastering this craft, and it starts by directly solving that #1 rookie mistake we talked about, using those raw, unadjusted numbers. The secret sauce is a technique called data binning, and it's actually a pretty simple idea. Instead of plotting a whole continuous range of numbers, you just group your data into a smaller number of categories, or bins. This little trick is what lets you finally see the real patterns that were being drowned out by all that population noise. To make this whole process really easy, the guide comes with its own custom software package, Breakers.jl. It's loaded with a bunch of sophisticated ways to bin your data. You can use stuff like Fisher-Jenks to find natural breaks in the data, or k-means for clustering, or even simpler methods. The point is, you have the right statistical tools right at your fingertips to classify your data correctly. But hey, it's not all about the numbers and stats. The book also dives into really important design principles. We're talking typography, color theory, the stuff that makes sure your map isn't just accurate, but also looks professional and is super easy to understand at a glance. Okay, so this all sounds good in theory, but does this modern approach actually make a real-world difference? Well, let's look at one of the most famous examples in the entire history of data mapping. Picture this. It's London, 1854. A terrifying cholera outbreak is sweeping the city. A doctor, John Snow, had a hunch, and it was a pretty controversial one at the time, that the disease was spreading through contaminated water, not through the air. And to prove it, he did something groundbreaking. He painstakingly mapped the location of every single cholera death. That map you see? It was a foundational moment for the entire field of epidemiology. His work was nothing short of brilliant. But you have to wonder, right? What if he'd had the kind of tools we have today? How much faster could he have solved that deadly puzzle? So take a look at this. On the left is Snow's original, hand-drawn map. On the right is the exact same data. The death locations are in blue and the water pumps are in red, but this time it's plotted using modern tools. And bam! The cluster of deaths around that one particular pump becomes instantly, undeniably obvious. It's the same story, but the clarity is just on another level. And this is what really illustrates the crucial point. This is a death density map created with Julia.
The brightest hotspot is practically screaming, "The problem is here." And here's the kicker. The book's analysis shows that with modern tools, that contaminated pump could have been identified using only the first day's worth of data. Just think about that for a second. That insight could have saved countless lives.
And that, right there, is the power we're talking about. This is what the Julia mapping ecosystem gives you. It's the ability to get past simple plots and start uncovering the hidden spatial stories inside your own data.
And you're not limited to just one type of map. You can create a huge variety of visualizations to answer all kinds of different questions. For instance, you can easily build radius and distance maps, just like this one, to analyze proximity and really understand the reach of a particular spot.
And you can get way more complex. You can create bivariate maps that show how two different variables interact with each other. You can make dot density maps for a much clearer picture of population distribution. You can even build these things called state bin cartograms, which give every state the same visual size so that large empty states don't unfairly dominate the map. The toolkit is just incredibly versatile, so you can always pick the right visualization for the story you want to tell.